Hey everyone, I am Kolari Lishonaike, and in this video I'm going to be doing a speech analysis of the recent address that Arnold Schwarzenegger made to, I guess, the people of Russia and Russian soldiers on the war in Ukraine. So now, first thing I want to preface this is by saying that I'm not endorsing what he is saying. I'm not taking sides on the conflict. I have personal views on it, of course. In particular, I'm very kind of disheartened by the treatment that African refugees have received compared to native Ukrainians. But this video and all these videos are about communication strictly and not about the politics or the morality of it. So I just want to make that clear on stuff like this so that you can watch this video by Arnie and just assess it and appreciate it for the impressive piece of communication that it actually is. So Arnie is giving this presentation or this address by video as a message, as he says, to the people of Russia about the Ukrainian war. So before we started, actually, the main thing I wanted to say is one of the reasons. So normally when I get information on like this on this, or I get links to videos that people send me all the time, which is great. Shout out to Tokes, who actually drew my attention to this video. I often kind of watch them for a little bit and then switch off, because most of the time when celebrities try and do stuff like this, they preach. So they're very condescending. It's very simplified. And in my view, it doesn't necessarily do that much good. It's more about stroking their own egos. But I found this video to a large extent, not perfectly, as I'll kind of outline as we go through the video. I found to an extent that actually Arnie was doing less of that. And he achieved what I always tell people is the highest form of communication, which is connection. He achieved a connection. Now, whether this video will be seen by any Russian people or any Russian soldiers, your guess is as good as mine. I suspect it will be seen by a few, but not many. But nevertheless, I get what Arnie was trying to do in it. So let's have a look, and then I'll kind of give my thoughts on it. Okay.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for sharing your time with me. I'm sending this message through various different channels to reach my dear Russian friends and the Russian soldiers serving in Ukraine. I'm speaking to you today because there are things that are going on in the world that are being kept from you, terrible things that you should know about. But before I talk about the harsh realities, let me just tell you about the Russian who became my hero.
Okay, so the opening is kind of why I almost switched off, because it sounded like it was going to be a video saying, hey, everything is terrible that Putin is doing and you need to, I don't know, have a coup or kick him out or whatever it is. And I was kind of not really very interested, mainly because I don't see videos like that to be particularly effective forms of communication. But when he said, let me tell you about the Russian who became my hero, I was intrigued, because it wasn't what I was expecting. And I imagine that other people who watched it in particular, if this actually got seen by the people of Russia, that they would be surprised as well, or at least intrigued. I would have preferred if it actually just started with, let me tell you about my Russian hero. But nevertheless, that part was 28 seconds, it looks like. So you can forgive him for starting with a little bit of preamble. But let's then see the story that he gives and uses.
In 1961, when I was 14 years old, a very good friend of mine invited me to come to Vienna and to watch the World Weightlifting Championships. I was in the audience when Yuri Petrovich Vlasov won the World Championship title, becoming the first human being to lift 200 kilograms over his head. And somehow a friend of mine got me backstage. All of a sudden there was a 14-year-old boy standing in front of the strongest man in the world. I couldn't believe it. He reached out to shake my hand. I mean, I still had a boy's hand. He had this powerful man's hand that swallowed mine. But he was kind, and he smiled at me. I will never forget that day. Never. I went home and I put his photo above my bed to inspire me when I started lifting weights. My father told me to take down that picture and to find a German or an Austrian hero. He got really angry and we argued back and forth. He didn't like Russians because of his experience in the Second World War. You see, he was injured at Leningrad, where the Nazi army that he was part of did vicious harm to the great city and to its brave people. But I did not take the photograph down, no, because it didn't matter to me what flag Yuri Vlasov carried. My connections to Russia didn't stop there, by the way. Oh, it actually deepened when I traveled there with bodybuilding and for my movies and met all my Russian fans. And on one of those trips, I remember, I met Yuri Vlasov once again. It was in Moscow during the filming of Red Heat, which was the first American movie allowed to film in Red Square. Now, he and I spent the whole day together. He was so thoughtful, so kind, and so smart, and, of course, very giving. He gave me this beautiful blue coffee cup. And ever since then, I've been drinking my coffee out of every morning. Now, the reason why I'm telling you all of those things is that ever since I was 14 years old, I've had nothing but affections and respect for the people of Russia. The strength and the heart of the Russian people have always inspired me. And that is why I hope that you will let me tell you the truth about the war in Ukraine and what is happening there.
So I let that run for quite a while. Normally I kind of use just little snippets of videos because that shows the power of storytelling. You will hear me, whenever you hear me talk about communication, talk about the importance of storytelling and how it is the most effective method of achieving a connection with your audience. Because instead of going into these are all the reasons that I think the war is wrong and that kind of thing, which is actually what I was expecting, he completely flipped it by telling a story about a Russian hero. So Yuri Vlasov, I think it is. I looked him up and he was an Olympian, strongman kind of thing. He got the Order of Lenin. He became a politician, he even ran for president at one point. So he's and I think he died actually about a year ago from this video. So he's kind of quite a significant Russian figure. And so by starting the video that says, let me tell you about my hero, who was a Russian figure that no doubt they will all know, it was actually a really effective way of saying, I'm not coming at this from disliking you or distrusting you or thinking that all Russians are bad. I actually I'm impressed with Russians. In fact, my greatest hero was a Russian. And then he adds to it by telling the story of his father, who he says was a Nazi, who fought against Russians, and how that was how his father viewed Russians, but he disagreed with him. So right from the start, just by telling a story and by choosing the story that he told, he has set himself up as not an adversary, not somebody is coming to preach and tell Russians that they're all bad or they don't know the truth and that kind of thing. But actually, listen, I feel for you. I feel connected to you. And so I'm telling you these things now because I care for you. Not I'm telling you these things because I'm kind of talking from on high. So it's a really effective method. And it's why you really have to focus and build your storytelling skills if you want to be an effective communicator. I do a lot of stuff on storytelling, so reach out to me on the links that you'll see with this video if you want to learn about them. But so really effective way of starting the address. And it means that you want to hear what he's going to say next because he has set himself up as a friend, as kind of a trusted colleague rather than somebody who's going to just pontificate. So well done, Arnie. Good start.
No one likes to hear something critical of the government. I understand that. But as a longtime friend of the Russian people, I hope that you will hear what I have to say. And may I remind you that I speak with the same heartfelt concern as I spoke to the American people when there was an attempted insurrection on January 6th last year, when a wild crowd was storming the US Capitol, trying to overthrow our government. You see, there are moments like this that are so wrong, and then we have to speak up.
So again, instead of jumping into, so let me tell you why the Russian offensive against Ukraine is wrong, he resists that and goes even further beyond the, look, my hero was a Russian and I've been to Russia and I love, Russian people, that kind of thing, to I'm also critical of my own country, the people of my own country, because of course, although he's Austrian born, he's now a US citizen. He was governor of California, so he's a proper American. But he shows his willingness that he's not coming from this from a place of everyone in the East is bad and everyone in the West is good, the good guys. But actually, no, we have gotten things wrong as well. So I'm speaking as a person who's just focused on fairness and right and that kind of thing. So again, if you're faced with a situation where you have to try and speak to someone who clearly takes a different view from you, it is really important that you focus on how can I establish a connection with that person? And how can I show that I'm not coming from a judgmental point of view, but I'm coming from a view that if they are willing, is kind of me meeting them where they are without judging. So again, really, really effective. And now he will then go on to give the reasons why he says the war is wrong. We'll see a little bit of that. It's kind of going to be this kind of stuff you'd expect.
This is exactly the same with your government. I know that your government has told you that this is a war to denazify Ukraine. Denazify Ukraine? This is not true. Ukraine is a country with a Jewish president, I might add, whose father's 3 brothers were all murdered by the Nazis.
So now he's going into the kind of the logic of why the things that are being said about the war by Russia are wrong and so forth. So I don't want to really dwell on this because that's kind of expected, that standard, and it's good, but we only listen to it because he set things up with a compelling story and a connection by saying, hey, I judge my own country equally as harsh. So if you're thinking of having to persuade someone or having to communicate with somebody that you know is going to struggle to agree with you, take this as a lesson for how it's so important to, first of all, try and establish some common ground or something that makes you feel like this person isn't just coming at me. And then they're going to be much more willing to listen to what you have to say. So let's skip a little bit now. Let's have a look.
See, the world has turned against Russia because of its actions in Ukraine. Whole city blocks have been flattened by Russian artillery and bombs, including a children's hospital and a maternity hospital. 3 million Ukrainian refugees, mainly women, children, and elderly, fled their country, and many more are trying to seek to get out. It is a humanitarian crisis. Because of its brutality, Russia is now isolated from the Society of Nations. You're also not being told the truth about the consequences of this war on Russia itself. The Russian government has lied not only to the citizens, but to its soldiers. Some of the soldiers were told they were going to fight Nazis. Some were told that the Ukrainian people would greet them like heroes, and some were told that they were simply going on exercise. They didn't even know that they were going into war. And some were told that they were there to protect ethnic Russians in Ukraine. None of this is true. The fact is that Russian soldiers have faced fierce resistance from the Ukrainians who want to protect their families and their country. When I see babies being pulled out of ruins, I think that I'm watching a documentary about the horrors of the Second World War, not the news of the day.
So having done the kind of the reasons why the war is wrong, which you would expect, and watch the full video, it's really worth a watch, but I don't want to kind of play all of that now. You can watch it in your own time. He doesn't overdwell on that aspect, but he kind of brings it back to a more personal touch, which is why this video is actually so much more effective.
Now let me tell you, when my father arrived in Leningrad, He was all pumped up on the lies of his government. And when he left Leningrad, he was broken, physically and mentally. He lived the rest of his life in pain. Pain from a broken back, pain from the shrapnel that always reminded him of these terrible years, and pain from the guilt that he felt.
So he's bringing it back to his father, and again, it's interesting because this is his father, but he's kind of positioning his father, who fought for the Nazis, as the villain in the story, but equally he's showing an understanding of, hey, yes, he was fighting for the Nazis, so he's the villain, but actually he was misled. So you can kind of understand it. And he's kind of trying to equate that with Russian soldiers and say, look, you're fighting on the wrong side, but you were also misled. So again, it's a really effective way of achieving what he wants to achieve, not by talking down or being judgmental, but by kind of using an analogy of his father to show the effect or the impact of being lied to. It's a very, very effective and smart way of addressing the point without just pontificating. And so he goes on.
To the Russian soldiers listening to this broadcast, you already know much of the truth that I've been speaking. You've seen it with your own eyes. I don't want you to be broken like my father. This is not the war to defend Russia that your grandfathers or your great-grandfathers fought. This is an illegal war.
So that's again really smart, because what he's also doing is tapping into the values that he knows, or at least assumes, that the Russian soldiers, in this case he's speaking to the soldiers, have. That is, that they have gone into this feeling like they are fighting for their country, they're fighting for their motherland. Russia is obviously a country, almost like few others, steeped in so much history. I know every country has its history, but there's been so much turmoil in Russia that it's kind of every decade there is some major piece of history happening in that country. And he's kind of trying to say that whilst your fathers and your grandfathers fought honorable wars, at the moment you're basically fighting like what the Nazis will be looked at when we look at it in history. And so that's what he's trying to do, to get into the psyche of the soldiers, get into their conscious, basically, and make them second guess the orders that they're given, make them second guess the killing and the shelling that they are doing, I guess with a view to undermining their morale for it, or at least their commitment to it, and therefore in some way maybe saving lives if, just one soldier doesn't quite shoot or whatever it is. So, but again, as a piece of communication, it really is very smart. Let's go on.
Your lives, your limbs, your futures are being sacrificed for a senseless war condemned by the entire world. Now, to those in power in the Kremlin, let me just ask you, why would you sacrifice this young man for your own ambitions?
So again, that's again quite smart, because what he's doing then is he's saying he's positioned himself as on the side of the ordinary Russian man, ordinary Russian woman, ordinary Russian soldier or people, and try to separate them from the leaders, the politicians, in this case, Putin. Actually, quite a smart use of the imagery there to show Putin at the long table, separated even from his own generals and kind of cabinet ministers, and basically trying to say that at the moment you're not fighting for the glory of Russia in the way your fathers and forefathers did, but you are fighting for the personal whims of a particular man or individual or a couple of people. So the leaders that really are far removed from you. Again, what he's trying to do is to insert their conscience in between the orders they receive and the actions they commit to, they do to carry out those orders. It's smart stuff by Arnie.
To the soldiers who are listening to this, remember that 11 million Russians have family connections to Ukraine. So every bullet you shoot a brother or a sister. Every bomb or every shell that falls is falling not on an enemy, but on a school or a hospital or a home.
That is super powerful. the contrast of everyone shoot is not for every bomb, I think, is falling on not an enemy, but a school, a hospital. He's personalizing the impact of war and basically keeping in with the narrative that he started with of you are doing pain to other people and you're doing pain to Ukrainians who actually are basically Russian connected in any event. And again, he's just trying to insert conscience in between the orders that they're given and the actions they take to carry them out by personalizing the impact of the war.
I know that the Russian people are not aware of such things are happening. So I urge the Russian people and the Russian soldiers in Ukraine to understand the propaganda and the disinformation that you're being told. I ask you to help me spread the truth. Let your fellow Russians know the human catastrophe that is happening in Ukraine. And to President Putin, I say, you started this war. You're leading this war. You can stop this war.
So he refers to propaganda. Now, the truth is, this is also propaganda. And as I said, it's a very impressive piece of communication, but we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that it is just his opinion from his side about the war. Other people will have different opinions, notably Russian people themselves, largely. So whether this message, even though it's from Arnie, and even though he established a good connection with his stories and all of that, whether this will actually connect with anybody, who knows? But it's interesting and it's a good attempt nevertheless. And I liked actually the way he addressed Putin directly. Putin's not going to listen to this at all, or even if he listens, not going to pay attention. But by saying you have the power to stop the war, again, it's as unjudgmental as you can be when you're speaking to somebody who you clearly believe is doing a terrible thing. You're still giving them the respect of saying, hey, you have the power and you can do it. As kind of about as effective a way to send that message as is possible.
Now, let me close with a message to all of the Russians who have been protesting on the streets against the invasion of Ukraine. The world has seen your bravery. We know that you have suffered the consequences of your courage. You have been arrested, you have been jailed, and you have been beaten. You are my new heroes. You have the strength of Yuri Petrovich Vlasov. You have the true heart of Russia.
Yeah, so I imagine I don't even have to say much to emphasize how good that passage was, because what he does is he's brought it full circle back to the story that he told about Yuri Vlasov. By saying that you are my new heroes, he has basically said, he's basically inviting them to put themselves into hero mode. You know, Vlasov won the Order of Lenin, as I said. I assume he's a highly revered figure. And by the way, not to kind of, so in a way, it's also why this is impressive, because looking up Vlasov on Wikipedia, as I did, you know, he was quite a nationalist himself. There's some references to him being quite anti-Semitic. So he didn't choose, it seems, a figure that was just popular in the West, but actually within Russia would have been seen as, you know, not really respected, whatever. He chose a figure that in himself was probably, I guess, in the country, supportive of autocrats and so forth. So it's a good choice because it means he is choosing someone, or he's identifying someone that, again, will mean he's not being judgmental by choosing a figure that even Russians think, oh yeah, but he wasn't really one of us, or he was a sellout, or whatever it is. So by bringing the address back to Yuri Vlasov, but then saying that, hey, you are being like Yuri Vlasov, and then his final words, you have the true heart of Russia. He's again appealing directly to the hearts of the people, the Russian people, celebrating their courage, which again is super impressive because it means that he is acting like he will connect with them as opposed to talking down on them.
My dear Russian friends, may God bless you all.
And by ending with "May God bless you all," it kind of reflects what presidents usually say in America, which is they say that "May God bless the United States of America." What he's basically shown is that I am completely on your side. I feel for you. I get where you're coming from. I'm just trying to, as a trusted friend, share some information with you that you should be willing to hear from me. So yeah, kind of a quick rush through analysis of that speech. And yeah, I think really very impressive attempt to speak to the issue and try in some way to address Russians directly, hoping that they will hear him. Whether they will, who knows? I kind of see these things partly as celebrities stroking their own egos a little bit. So whether this was more for him than for those, I don't know. It felt quite authentic and honest to me. Wonder what the Russian people will make of it. But more importantly, for our purposes, is it was a good example of strong communication. So well done, Arnie. I take my hat off to you.